Welcome back. The Asian Infrastructure Investment Bank, or AIIB, is calling for frank conversation and international cooperation amid global uncertainties.
As the multilateral bank marks its 10th anniversary next year, its outgoing founding president, Lin Liqun, sat down with CNA's Tan Soo-hui at their Beijing headquarters. He reflected on how the bank has evolved since Chinese President Xi Jinping proposed the initiative in 2013.
We provide $66 billion, 245 projects, covering many areas. All this certainly is important. But most important, we managed to set up a bank with high governance standards and implement with international best practice. So people have trust in this bank. I think that's the most important part of the success.
Has the perception of AIIB globally changed in your view, especially given the US and Japan are still not members?
You know, from the very outset, we certainly had the challenge of convincing people. From the very beginning, I think, set up the decision-making process, which is very important. The governance structure is more or less the same as that of the Bretton Woods institutions. There might be some difference because the developing countries are the majority shareholder, whereas developed countries are the minority shareholder. So how could we work together? How could we convince, for instance, all of these European countries and later on Canada to believe that we mean what do we say? We want to have a new type development bank adhering to high standards to deal with development challenges, to deal with climate change, and to create jobs for people, particularly jobs for women. We also need to say we have a very high standard of environmental or social framework. And all those important parts are being done step by step. So actually, it did not take too long for people to believe that we would comply with the best of the standards for multilateral development banks.
Now, given overlapping mandates, how does the bank decide when to co-finance projects with institutions like the Asian Development Bank or with the World Bank?
We focus on infrastructure and other productive sectors, which pave the path for sustained growth. So we do not depend on concessional funding. We depend on technology, the focus on those projects which can help these people to stand on their own feet. And so in this way, we supplement the World Bank, AIIB, and others, rather than competing for limited resources. But you know, why co-financing is important? Because you see, for major infrastructure projects, it's a big ticket kind of thing, and it calls for hundreds of millions or even billions of dollars. No single institution can handle single-handedly. And also, for those institutions which have been operating for 5 decades, even 8 decades, they would reach the limit of their country exposure. When we chip in, we contribute resources, so the World Bank AIIB can reduce certain part of their funding so that we work together. When we all work together, certainly the development bank's influence of, for instance, policy, reform would be certainly greater.
But if we look at the geopolitical climate at this point of time, there are rising challenges, fragmentation, trade tensions. We've seen the US put renewed emphasis on domestic infrastructure and tariffs. You know, how should multilateral institutions like yours respond to keep global finance open and rules-based?
You refer to the membership issue of US and Japan, and the bank has maintained very good business relations with the US, American or Japanese financial institutions or business companies, because we believe we work together to promote the common good. And in the context of geopolitical situation, I think we have all the reason to push for concerted efforts to deal with climate change and sometimes the challenges faced by some other countries, and for instance, scarcity of resources, power supply, and all kind of issues. You know, the teams of this bank and others also work together very well, seamlessly. Now, when you look at the positive results of international cooperation among the multilateral institutions, I think people would be convinced that if we are faced with some of the challenges, the only solution is sit down and have a talk, frank talk, and then we come up with some of the solutions.
Jin Liqun will be stepping down in January after nearly a decade at the helm. He will be succeeded by Zhou Jiayi, a former Chinese vice finance minister.